And welcome, everybody, to another edition of Dunking on Joe. We are at it again for this week. Joe, even putting in his name, Joe 2-0 Pepe. Oh, well, yeah, he has to gloat because he's now 2-0. Everybody has sided with Joe the past couple of weeks when we do this show. Of course, this is Dunking on Joe, presented to you by Club Fantasy FFL. I am Evan Bush, as always, the great El Bushman, the host of the show. And as always, Dunking on Joe with Joe himself, back at it again to retain the title, hopefully. But this week, he's going up against Rich Maletto at Fantasy Bosco. Rich, how's it going, man? Thanks for coming on the show, Dunking on Joe this week.
Awesome. Doing well. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man. So, of course, the premise of the show is we have a guest come on each week to try and dunk on Joe. And we go through a topic that they're going to really pretty much state their case. We've got the coin flip coming up in just a couple of seconds. So this week's topic is Dalvin Cook a top 10 running back for fantasy this year? So, fellas, I'm going to bring up the coin of destiny, as we per se in the show each and every week. Joe, you won last week. So, Rich, let's do the coin flip. Are we going to do heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails. All right, here we go.
I never get tails, man.
Tails never fails, Joe. And it is heads.
And it does fail. There you go.
All right, Joe, you have won the coin toss. Are you going to go first or second this week?
Let me go first. I'll go first this week.
You went first last week.
I know, but it worked for me, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm superstitious, man.
All right.
In all fairness, I'm good with it. Let him go first.
All right. I'm going to remove the coin of destiny, and here we go. Joe, state your case. Is Dalvin Cook a top 10 running back for fantasy?
Okay. So my argument for Dalvin Cook is going to come down to a few different stats on how he could positively regress from last year. Now, we all know he had a rough season last year with injuries and things like that. So let's go through the stats here. In 2022, his touchdown rate, it fell from 5.2, his normal, to 2.4. So I had to start looking through some of the stats. So then I looked through touchdown dependency, which for people who don't know what that is, it's the percentage of fantasy points that come from touchdowns. Cook was at 27% in 2019. In 2020, he was at 30. And last year, he was 17%. The league average is 25. And I know it sounds like I'm making an argument against him, but I'm just trying to explain how it was a blip on the radar last year. Then we move down to the next stat, that there was 18 players with 200 rushing attempts, and he was the only one with a touchdown dependency rate below 20%. So we keep going down. We keep looking down this thing. So we move down next to Minnesota and how they had an unusually high passing total. In 2019, they had the fifth highest rush to pass ratio. Then in 2020, they were 18th. Last year, they were 31st in the entire NFL. So they changed their whole script up last year and got away from Dalvin Cook, which is not a Mike Zimmer thing and a normal thing to do. I know he's gone now, but it's not their normal. So they normally run through Dalvin Cook. So then after that, we got to keep looking at another stat for Cook. And this time we're going to look at how Cook had a rushing touchdown every 41.5 carries. Sounds awful. But however, that's outside of his norm, considering his rate is every 19.4 in the last two seasons. So again, blip on the radar. Then we're going to finally look at how he was a workhorse when he was healthy. He averaged 22 touches per game, which was fifth in the NFL. He averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game, which made him 11th in the running back position. His ADP is 8th. If I can get the guy who can make 15 points a game on average, who can get around 22 touches, who has a pretty strong offense around him to continually keep up with the other teams, who then also gets to face the Lions twice a year and the Bears now twice a year, who I think is a rebuilding team. I don't think anyone would argue that point. I'm going to go with Dalvin Cook every chance I get. And then finally, he averaged 14 and a half touchdowns from 2019 and 2020. Last year, he had a meager 6. And I know that sounds like I'm making a case against him. But again, all these stats are showing that he just had a blip on the radar, that it wasn't his best season, but we know who he is because he's more consistent in all those other seasons. Yes, he has the injury history, but when he's on the field, he's dominant. So I will take him and keep him in the top 10 of running backs for this season with no issue whatsoever.
Wow. This is longer than last week. You did longer than last week.
Longer than
Okay, you
last
got
week.
about two minutes left on the clock. So, all right. Well, that is your case. Rich, state your case. Is Dalvin Cook a top 10 running back this year for fantasy?
He's not for me. I the way he's getting drafted, I just won't get any shares of him. I will agree with Joe on some points, right? For his injury concerns, the last 3 years, he's played 13 to 14 games, which is nothing outlandish for any other running back. His touchdown numbers were down last year, although I'd argue in 19 and 20, seeing 13 to 16 is probably a bit high. That, 8 or 9 is probably fair for any given year. In 20, he had a great year, so I think some people just overlook that. My biggest concern, though, isn't with what he's done in the past. It's what I think he will do in the future. I do not have faith in this new running scheme, at least as far as how it fits Dalvin Cook. Gary Kubiak, Clint Kubiak, the previous offensive coordinators and systems here was based on that zone run scheme that Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan have run. They've done it well. We've seen it with Arian Foster in Houston, and it takes the right kind of back to do it. Not everybody can do it, and sometimes the unheralded ones that people don't think can do it well. I don't see that happening with the new system. He's not set up for the type of power run game they're looking to run now, and I don't think it's going to bode well for his touches either. We've heard things from the offense talking about wanting to get Kene Nwangu involved more than just a handful of little bits and pieces. So how much that means for touches and carries, I don't know, but seems odd to me that a guy that no one really has on their fantasy radar is being talked about being used in some sort of creative way. I guess he fits as a gadget player, but I'm more convinced that you invested in Dalvin Cook in the past because of the Gary Kubiak running back system, and you're not going to get that anymore. So be careful about looking at the history of what you're drafting and get a better idea of what you're looking at in the future. I think they're going to be throwing even more this year than they did last year. One, I think they need to, first of all, the Vikings put themselves in many holes last year, having to play catch up in the fourth quarter after having early game leads. So I think that skewed a little bit of the play calling. And I think if they're going to win this year, they know they've got to go through Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen with a little bit of Cook mixed in. So it's more of, I think the volume will be somewhat down. And really, I don't think they want to get him up over 250, 249 touches or carries. I think that's still a fair number, but it's not high volume. I just don't think he's going to be anywhere near as efficient since it's not going to be that zone run scheme.
All right. You got about 3.5 minutes left on the clock, but I honestly think, Joe, Rich is maybe giving you a run for money this year. What do you think?
You know what, though? I think he has a cheating secret weapon because I was just watching the dog in the bagged I'm so hype about it. I watched that dog the whole time, and I'm like, wow, these are really good points, but I'm like, come on, do a spin, do something.
So I don't know if you guys would agree with me. Dalvin Cook has, to me, been a really frustrating fantasy player, kind of ever since he got into the league, especially with all the injuries he's had. I mean, obviously, Rich, you made a great point. Injuries aside, he is a great player on the field when he's on there. But, to me, and last year was kind of like the first year I drafted Dalvin Cook pretty high in my drafts, and he got hurt. I mean, he was out a couple of weeks and then came back. But when he came back, he was great. But to me, if he's going to be a top 10, I need a running back that's going to be healthy all throughout the season instead of just, being injured for a few and then coming back and being injured again. So, Dalvin Cook's, in my opinion, he's kind of in that mind where he's so frustrating. He could be maybe out of the top 10, maybe going forward because he is getting older, per se.
Yeah, and I will give everybody this. If I am getting Dalvin Cook in the leagues that I have him in now, I am always grabbing Alexander Madison a little bit before that ADP, so I have that handcuff regardless, because he missed both of those Lions games last year, and Alexander Madison just smashed that entire defense.
Well, awesome. Well, this has been another edition of Dunkin' on Joe. Rich, thanks for coming on the show. Please tell everybody where we can find you on all the social media platforms that you're on.
You can find me I'm only on Twitter, so you can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Bosco, how it sounds and spells out. That's B for Bosco. My content you can find on fantasyguru.com. It is a subscriber site, but welcome to check it out. We have a lot of things going on there. I can't speak highly enough of the team there. And once in a great while, you will hear me from time to time either fill in or I should say more like just hop in for a mock or a guest spot on SiriusXM once in a great while. So it's about all where you'll find me, not a whole heck of a lot of spots.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Now it's up to you. Make sure to go to clubfantasyffl.com to cast your vote today to see if Joe is going to go 3-0 after this week. I think Rich is really kind of giving his run for his money. So hopefully Rich will make Joe go to 2-1 after this week. Of course, make sure to go to all the social media platforms at Club Fantasy FFL to get all the great content that we have. Make sure to go and tune in on Wednesday for another edition of No Pun Intended. And speaking of drafts, make sure to go to the YouTube channel and subscribe smash that subscribe button to get all the content that we have over here at Club Fantasy FFL. Market Like It Side will be back next week. I've been kind of absent because of jobs and because of family stuff, so I haven't been there in the last couple of weeks, but Ryan's been holding it down great for all of our great drafts that we're doing leading up to this season with all your questions and answers about what draft should I be in, what strategies should I do, and what positions I should be in. So, and also remember, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, new articles drop on Club Fantasy FFL. We've got some great ones coming down this week. We've got an article about Michael Pittman from Drew Metcalf and Justin Herbert by Zach Berger and Michael Thomas, who's actually going to be in the league this year, probably. Maybe in the league. So that's going to drop on Friday from Ryan himself. So make sure you guys go to Club Fantasy FFL to get all that great content that we're putting out each and every day of the week. So for myself and Joe, and thanks for Rich for coming on the show. It's been another edition of Dunkin' on Joe. We'll see you next time.